Welcome to Pursuing Joy, where we discuss audacious stories of joy-infused strength. I had the pleasure of meeting Tiffany from another podcast guest, and I cannot wait to have her share her story and where she's been and where she's headed. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you, Julie, for having me. I love the word audacious. I hope I can live up to that expectation.
Oh, yes. I love words. And so I'm a writer at heart. I wish I could speak like I write, but I will take a sentence and look for the perfect word when I'm writing, and that they don't just immediately pop into my head when I'm speaking or continuing in a conversation. So tell us a little bit about what your history in HR and what led up to your current business today, and just kind of the path to the path to the path.
Well, Julie, it's no reason that you and I immediately clicked, because words matter to me. It's something I often say. There's always more than one way to say exactly what you mean to say. And also moments matter. And so that's how I built my career, is really finding and diagnosing the right moments for transformational change. So I spent more than 24 years in the HR industry in sort of a progressive track of doing everything but compensation and recruiting. But I do have that in my background as well, and kind of cobbled together this non-traditional HR pathway. Everything from analytics roles, where I was a sole provider of analytics to the company, to managing teams of 300 people in our production operations. So from the agave fields to the C-suite, I've sort of done it all with a brand building business. But now I am the proud founder of Onward and Upward Growth Coaching, and where I create stronger people, smarter processes, and thriving businesses from all of that. And that's how we got connected, because I think that at the heart of that, stronger people come from a place where they have joy, energy, and fulfillment, at least in part, to what they do with their lives and with their work. I think it's possible. I really do think there's hope for us.
Yes. And I think as I'm talking to more and more people on this podcast and through other connections, I think things like HR, or, being in an HR director role or anything like that, where it's been a full-time, well, more than full-time, let's be honest, more than full-time job in the past, but with things like AI coming in to, help alleviate some of those tasks, I think the answer is more of this kind of fractional work, or offering up people like us who kind of get the itch to start something new or start our own thing. I think this is the time to do that. What led to this decision? Because I feel like when we talked, there was a little bit of a pivot that came that was like, okay, kind of unexpected. So how did you get here?
So like so many industries, the industry that I was in was, a manufacturing and beverage alcohol industry. COVID and supply chain issues and consumer loyalty have just caught up with the business. And so some radical decisions had to be made. And there was an opportunity for me to, I think, elegantly exit from a company where I could count on one hand and one finger how many times I didn't want to go in. It was a beautiful place to work with great friendships, fun business, and based on relationship building. So it was an opportunity for me to do something that I've been super passionate about, which is bring team transformation and efficiency and effectiveness on my time to the clients that really can't afford a fully developed learning and development group, or they are at a certain sort of profitability position where it doesn't make sense for them to add staff. They may have HR, but those HR folks are doing other things like growing the business or finding talent. They don't necessarily have time to do anything with the people once they get into the business. And that's where I come in, providing development and coaching, meeting with teams to make them more effective. And one of the most interesting things I've done recently is talk to people as a part of the Working Genius work that you and I are both familiar with, about how to have better and more productive meetings. And it has been truly enlightening to watch the clients and the other team members just spark over the fact that, you mean we can have meetings that are actually productive and we don't have to have a meeting before the meeting and a
Oh,
meeting after the meeting? So that was a long way of answering your question. I have segued out of corporate America and hope to use my corporate America very flexible and innovative experience to help teams transform and businesses reach their goals.
yes. Awesome. Okay. So you've recently, I was on LinkedIn, you said that you started, was it at a college? You're introducing. So explain to me that
Yes,
capacity of what you're doing right now
yes.
with that. And then we'll go back to how you even started down the Working Genius
It
path.
is such a minor but very exciting piece of what I've been doing, but through a connection, again, a relationship that I had built through my prior company, the southern Indiana area of Kentucky. So Kentucky border southern Indiana, and we call it Kentuckiana often,
Okay.
is really growing. And so through some partnerships, they are looking for how to develop business talent through Ivy Tech Community College, which is ranked number one of all of the technical colleges of its size in the US. And so who knew? I did not know that. But through a mutual connection, they offer adjunct facility or faculty positions where we can come in and train students and also offer it to business leaders as kind of an adult learning format. And so I was on their calendar. I've had to be approved as a faculty member, the whole official thing. And what's interesting is when I was 18, I took one of those career surveys and it told me
Right.
I should be a teacher. And I was like, not me. And I ended up teaching adults throughout my corporate career and now literally in a spot that I probably should have listened a little bit more to in the beginning.
Okay. So you just made me think of something as I've gone down this Working Genius interview process. I started with, reached out to the Working Genius community and asked for 5 people to be on my podcast, which has completely exploded and a domino effect happened. And it has been this incredible business, professional, social, communal experiment.
Nice.
I've loved it. I have to figure out how to do some analytics and put it together and put some of my findings out there. But one of them is uh, the facilitators that have the enablement genius tend to teach more in their facilitation process, and the galvanizing tend to be lean more on the trainer side. And I mean that
Mhm.
in the way
Mhm.
that they go about uh, just the facilitation, and I feel like the enablement is more of, I'm helping you get to this next piece, and it becomes more individualistic
Right.
in the group setting, because I was like, there's no way that there are facilitators out there with a galvanizing frustration, but lo and behold, they are there, and it's just they facilitate and teach or train the working genius in a way that brings them joy and energy. So
Ah,
it's very unique. The facilitation is very unique
mhm.
based on the geniuses themselves, which I found very fascinating. So and I wasn't even thinking about that until you just said that okay, this teaching thing came up
Yes.
before. And so enablement is obviously a calling and a purpose in your
Mhm.
life. So that is awesome. So explain to me how that works in a student environment, as far as how would you take a class or college students through Working Genius?
Well, they have given me the 4-hour time slot that I think is the very minimum that is required. So that was key. I don't think that a practitioner should under deliver in terms
Right.
of time spent with the debrief. So they'll take the survey before we arrive, and then we'll basically break it down. I'm using that Post-it note method that other people have used
Okay.
also, where the survey results are placed on the Post-it notes, and then we've got a couple of activities with that. But what I think is going to be different about this is that the group will be business leaders from around the community from a variety of backgrounds. And so it's really important to me to draw out a case study or scenario for us to work through how the elevations of the working genius come to matter and come to be important as you're ideating around something. And so my first capability is galvanizing. And so that kind of blows up my discernment and enablement and makes it sort of extra. I would call it
Right.
sort of an
Yes.
extra,
My third is galvanizing as well. I
extra
understand that.
little push, right? And so pushing them to action. So it's important for me to end that 4-hour session for them to leave with some working tools, some things that they'll actually take with them. So we'll be doing a group case study, but then on an individual level, I'll be asking them to work through one of their current problems, one of their current workplace frustrations. And workplace frustrations is a polite way of saying your workplace pet peeve. And
Right.
so I typically ask that as an interview question when I've hired people. What is your workplace pet peeve? And probably 50% of the time it's something related to lack of control or pace or the organization of the meetings or where there's some decision science is met. Well, all of that points back to the entire working genius model. So how brilliant is that?
Yes. Yeah. So I had Crystal Lee on here, Crystal Lee Crary, who was working in a capacity at a college. And she was helping students with their career paths or their majors based on the working genius assessment. Do you see that being something that you could possibly use in that class as well? And what would make a student think that I need to come into this class?
It's a great question. Yes, I think that it serves a purpose both pre-employment, during employment, and then even as a look back. But on the pre-employment place, if there's a student that really is not in their chosen area of profession at this time, I think the ranking philosophy behind the working genius attributes is critical for you to find a role that, for all intents and purposes, could over time, and that's a key, supply joy, energy, and fulfillment to your work. It won't happen for everyone right away. We can't all be a food critic on the beach in the Caribbean as our jobs. We will have to do some of the other things, and that's a great example. That sounds amazing to me right now. I don't know how it sounds amazing to you, but that requires a level of tenacity of recording data and reaching out and finding the places that is one of my working frustrations. So knowing that might help keep a student from either idealizing a role or profession that seems amazing, like a vlogger or a social influencer, because it really does require something out of their working frustrations that maybe they're not willing to make the trade-off to give all of the time. It is not always fun and fantasy. And another learning from that for students is that they might need a partnership to accomplish their goals. They might need to leverage a teammate, a colleague, another student to balance out their frustrations and put them in a rank order so things actually get done.
Right. Yes. And I don't think working genius necessarily makes you land or gives you an idea of where your dream job needs to be, but whatever job you're in, you can find where you are valuable in the work taking place.
Exactly. And it could help steer you clear of roles that are, require 80 to 90% of tasks, for the long term that are in your working frustrations. And if so, not to say that it should be avoided, but you should be aware of the energy exchange that you're going to have in order to keep that up.
Yes.
And so if it's a short-term engagement, we can all do the hard things. We really can. It's we prove that to ourselves over and over. But if it's something that you're signing up for and you have other options, to be aware of the energy exchange helps you not take on too much, especially when you recognize what your true capacity is.
Yes, that is so true. And I know Crystal Lee mentioned that she advises her students, if they know they're working genius, to put it on their resume to just speak to their own self-awareness, which I thought was a brilliant thing. And what are your frustrations?
What are my frustrations?
Working genius frustrations.
Tenacity and wonder.
Okay. So when people have the geniuses of wonder and tenacity, that always kind of throws me a little bit. So that's interesting that your frustrations are wonder and tenacity. And so you know, as well as I know, that as you are venturing off, entrepreneurship typically begins with solopreneurship. So we do
Mhm.
have to live and work in our frustrations as
Mhm.
well. So I personally see that come up with tenacity. My frustrations are enablement and tenacity. And I see it come up
Mhm.
more with the tenacity. Like I really have to set myself up to be successful in tenacity as far as like
Mhm.
building up my energy in other areas or just realizing, okay, sometimes it helps me for my tenacious, like where I have to sit in front of my computer and do things that are so
Mhm.
mundane and boring to me. I just need to be in a different environment. Sometimes if I just take my computer and jazz up the environment a little
Mhm.
bit,
Sure.
that is helpful for me. Uh, what and so I feel like people with the enablement genius, and a lot of times enablement and tenacity are together, but how they end up accidentally going into entrepreneurship is they just see a gap or a hole that they need to fill,
Mhm.
and that is their way of being helpful, and so they kind of go into it that way.
Mhm.
How have you seen your geniuses, competencies, or your frustrations show up in this process of building your own business?
Fabulous question. So, as you might imagine, the wonder part was easy. I have, even though it's one of my frustrations, I had enough leftover energy over the past, say, decade of my career to wonder how things could be different. So, it was pretty easy for me to transfer that energy over to the next parts of the areas that I'm really good at. I'm a discernment. I lead with discernment. I can generally diagnose pretty quickly and advise. I can even become part of the organizations that I'm working with so much that I feel like I feel like I'm an employee there. I
Right.
take on their atmosphere. Maybe it's their morale, maybe it's their concerns, and maybe it's their positive energy. And so with that level of discernment, I have transferred that over into my business. Now, where it is difficult to be an entrepreneur with wonder and tenacity is that the wonder part, yeah, pretty much settled. I can wonder about new ideas and then I can quickly discern whether they're going to fit. But you've said something that matters to me, which is the tenacity part. So I have used things like Chat GPT and Canva templates, and anywhere there's a template of that keeps me from having to
Right.
wonder and reinvent the wheel. That's how I manage my tenacity. And so I am. We had a phrase in corporate America called "steal with pride," and so right. And I led many a session about adapt, adopt, or create, and the energy exchange, and the money exchange, and the time exchange you have to have when you wholesale. When you're going to just adapt something or take something
Mhm.
off the shelf, which is adoption, or create, a lot more energy goes to create. So I am willing and happy to say we should all, I don't think anything's truly original anymore, adapt and adopt as much as we can,
Mhm.
especially if you have a working frustration of tenacity, because the faster I get those T items done, the faster I am back to working in my areas of genius.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I had Heather Italiano on earlier this week, and she brought up something about discernment that I hadn't considered, because discernment is a frustration of hers. And
Mhm.
so discernment is your genius, and it's also one of my geniuses. And she said, we were talking about how she started her podcast and how she got there, and even her own business, and how she was struggling with whether it was the right move to make or not, because her discernment was her frustration. So it was hard for her to get a gut response as to what to do. And it made me realize, okay, with the genius of discernment, I what she said to me gave me more traction in or belief in my gut response and trusting
Mhm.
myself, because I tend to know pretty instantly whether I'm going to do something or not. And I tend to pull the trigger fairly quickly. I do try to work within, my biblical values and belief of, being still. But it doesn't come easily to me to do that. But I when she was telling me about the need to kind of vet out that next decision or the next thing to do because it was a frustration, I was like, oh, that is why I move so easily into things, because I do trust my gut most of the time. Now, when things aren't working out as smoothly as I would like them to, I really, really start questioning things. But it gave me more belief in that being a gifting spiritually and in my genius as well. Uh, do you feel like you tend to know pretty soon whether you're going to pivot or what your next move is and have belief in it?
I do, but you mentioned your spirituality, and I also believe too that it doesn't come from our faith, but it comes from elsewhere, the sense of doubt. And so anytime things aren't as easy, because with discernment and enablement, you want to diagnose it, but you also want to facilitate it faster. And so if there's roadblocks, then the self-doubt can creep in. And so what I tend to do is go back to what made me make that choice in the first place. So back to the discernment genius to say, now wait, what circumstances have changed to make me doubt myself? Nothing has changed since the day I made the decision. I'll cross the bridge when I come to it. And so I always, I worry in advance for things, which is, I believe, both a blessing and
Right.
kind of a double-edged sword of having that forward-looking intuition. We see things ahead of when they happen. I'm able to somewhat use logic to predict some things that have happened, but I do spend a fair amount of time saying things like, I don't know the plan, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know this, what's fashioned out in front of me. And so I need to be still, to your point, and listen and turn the discernment on for places of work, right? Or
Right.
activities at work. And because I'm a work-life integrator, that tends to be very like a gray area. I'm not lukewarm, but gray.
Right.
So I sit back and I try to think through that. And I'm actually going through one of those, to be vulnerable, through one of those periods right now, because I mentioned before that I'm spinning a lot of plates waiting to see where my next chapter takes me. And as an entrepreneur that doesn't have a clear niche, but loves to do a lot of things, I need to just turn the discernment on myself.
Right.
And I need to partner with a coach that has discernment as one of their geniuses, but also has something like tenacity or something like, invention to help me sort of break free from my own self.
Yes. Yes. And I think overall community does matter. Uh, as an entrepreneur, as a person, but also as an entrepreneur, because it can be a very
Mm-hmm.
lonely road.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw recently that you did something a little bit out of your comfort zone at a Toastmasters event. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that came about?
Yes. The collaboration over competition is a theme of a group called the Woe Network that I'm part of. And it's led by some fabulous women, Holly Hartman being one of them. And I have been a prior member of Toastmasters, but it was at work and it was very work related. People were very guarded. So, I had a time, again, spinning these plates,
Mhm.
deciding where I'm going to go, craving network, craving the community that was no longer available to me on the daily at my choice after leaving the corporate world.
Right.
Toastmasters fits right in. Usually this chapter meets before the workday, so there's no excuse really not to get up. So this morning, in fact, I was up
Oh,
at
really?
5:15, there by 6:45. Did not win a ribbon, but they have a warm up activity where people are called upon on the spot to do a warm up conversation, and it's called a table topic, and it's a subject. And so I found myself just volunteering. I think in retrospect, it might have been because I was a bit late. And so I felt like I owed the group some respect by participating. And
Okay.
because the speaker was like, anybody else, kind of looking out. And I was like, okay, well, I will. And it turned out that I won the ribbon for the best table topic. The table topic, funny enough, was for me to sell the speaker my car. And so I had to ad hoc think
Oh,
about what the attributes would be and what the reasons why someone would want to buy my car. And, I have my car's named, and it is kind of fun and special. And so I tried to sell him my car. So it was fun, but I just found myself leaping out of my seat and doing that. But doing it in front of a room full of people that are expert at this and have been in this club for 30 years and could talk and speak and storytell circles around myself, that was very different for me. Usually I am the speaking expert in the room.
yes. I mean, there is a reason why we need people ahead of us and behind us, right? So that
Absolutely.
it always, and I am trying, in where I am currently, I'm trying to find areas where I can be around people that will elevate my growth or inspire me
You
to
might
grow.
love it. You said you like to write, but the speaking part, this might be perfect for you.
Yes,
It's
I've done Toastmasters before, but well, twice. Once way back in college, and then in 2020, which was
Mm.
not the right time because it was all virtual, and I was like, I feel like I've got the virtual thing down.
Yes,
In fact, I've too much in my life is done virtually, so I will have to see how it has evolved in my area since
absolutely.
2020.
Hmm.
Tell me, either personally or professionally, and I know part of the job pivot came from just exiting, from a
Hmm.
job, but something else where joy, or where something didn't feel very joyful in the moment, but has now elevated you in a way based on that experience and has now brought joy into your life, possibly.
Oh, that's a great question. On a personal level, to your audience, my story is not unique. I'm sure women face this quite a bit, but I have basically, not only did I transition out of my job that I had for, a quarter of a decade, but I also recently transitioned myself out of being a full-time mother to my children as they are fledged. They are not grown and flown necessarily, but they're and so the lots of things as being, even though I was a working mom, I never missed a sick day or an opportunity to be at a ball game. I had lots of flexibility that I worked hard to earn the honor of at my prior company. However, for the first time in 2 weeks, last Sunday, my son, who just was married in August, made an outbound call to his mother without being asked to. And so that is the joy part of it. So the note to the mothers out there that are in the thick of raising their children, I found to be aware of all of the time in my, daily time pie that was considered either driving somebody someplace, preparing for or managing their life. Remember that gap must be filled. You will want it to be filled when they start to move away from you, which is the reason why we raise them anyway. We don't raise them to stay with us. It's not even biblical that they stay with
Yeah.
us. And so we have enjoyed all of this captive phase of teaching and learning and reliance. We get addicted to the reliance, them relying on it. We call them dependence. And so when you get yourself free of the dependency of those children on you, what are you going to fill it with? And considering that in advance, COVID forced me to. I experienced divorce, which forced me to. I had to fledge that third child, so to speak.
Mhm.
And then I found myself really going, who am I? What's my value? Where do I find my adult networks? How do I feel valuable in the community? Because it was I invested time in the community from leadership perspective for my kids' schools and you name it. I'm not telling a story that's unfamiliar, But what I think catches up to us as women, as leaders, as working moms, is that deficit. And I had a preacher say one time, when you have a habit, you cannot break that habit until you know precisely what's going to fill it. Because that hole that
Right.
is created, whether it's exercise, food, addiction, whatever it is, social media, you cannot replace that habit, good or bad, unless you know what's going to fill it. So take time to decide what's going to fill it. For me, that's been a great thing with networking and business practices and writing and blogging and reflecting. I've had the benefit of doing that. Won't always be the case, but I feel like I'm prepared to sort of lead my own life, which is a gift to my kids too, because
Yes.
me relying upon them, or any mother relying upon their kids too much, limits their ability to, fly in the direction that they need to fly.
Right. Okay. So then touch on what is currently bringing you joy.
Yeah. So I mentioned that my son called. So that brings me joy. It's the kind of the coming back of that. It's also seeing both of my children thrive in the spaces that they've chosen for themselves, even the hard parts. My daughter's 22. She's a preschool teacher, but teacher salaries don't pay the bills to the extent that she wants them to. So she has a second job. It's been really joyful to see her manage through work, and for us to talk through even the working genius aspects.
Right.
Not sure if you've heard of the Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin, but I am an obliger. I do things when asked. She is a rebel. She does nothing unless she decides to. So one of the joys of understanding the working genius and other ways of interacting is that we are now able to move into a different phase of our relationship where we can have mutual respect for one another's position on things and to enjoy each other, but have a healthy distance between our lives that is less dependent upon me. So,
Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay. I haven't asked this before, but just based on some of the subjects that have been brought up and things that have caused both of us to pivot, I'm not in the I'm close and dreading the empty nest.
yes.
Uh, but it'll still be a ways away. But I know just because since I have 4 children, like that me getting there will take a little bit longer than the person with 1 or 2 children. But I have a feeling it will hit probably harder
Yes.
because the amount of time in my life that we have spent together. But what is an area of growth for you right now? What is something that you are trying to grow in, or that you've noticed that you need to grow in, and you may or may have not found a way to do that? Tell me something about growth currently.
Yes. So my company is called Onward and Upward Growth. And it's moving onward, just charging through. I mean, it literally is doing the actions even when you don't feel like them to go through them. And then upward has a double meaning. It's upward in, gratification, fulfillment, but also closer from a faith perspective is that if you're going on with things, your opportunity for decreased satisfaction increases. So you want to always be looking upward for things that are going to bring. So my area of growth really is to, you mentioned before, be still. It's a great way of putting it, but it is to relinquish control over things that I can't control, and really is to trust. So trust is a huge theme in my life. I'm adopted. I've had a lot of, there's some primal wounds related to that. I know that I'm chosen in so many ways, both by the kingdom, but also by my family. So I understand that, but there is some trust related growth areas for me. I trust very willingly. And so I just kind of fly, and I reset. And sometimes I can be I don't want to call it a victim. It's not really that, but I can be vulnerable to making decisions that not necessarily good for the long-term business plan. And I'm speaking from a business standpoint. So I will say yes to everything. And I am generous to a fault in that. And that's because I want to help. Discernment and enablement. I want to help. So one of my growth areas, I'm meeting with a mentor next Friday to teach me how to discern the right things to say yes and no to, so that I don't find myself having depleted all of my energy, but haven't paid the bills. And
Right.
so that's very unnatural for me, because I have been in roles where they just knock on my door and they get what they need from me, and my company would pay me the salary.
Right.
Well, I
Right.
got to
No,
pay
that's an
myself
excellent
now.
point.
And
Okay.
so
Yes.
really difficult. So that's an area for growth.
Okay. Yes, that does make so much sense, because when you are helping or providing a service for someone while you're at work, you are getting compensated for that in you being there
Mhm.
and doing that and being expected to do that. And yes, there is a lot of uh, time spent on this entrepreneur journey that does not end up in an ROI. And I'm not, and I love all the relationships that I have built through
Mhm.
this process. But yes, I'm within the same realm of, okay, it is time to buckle down and stop dispersing my energy and my time to everyone that asks for it. So that,
Mhm.
and I don't know about you, but so like on LinkedIn or anywhere where I'm saying this, I have this business, so many people start coming in suggesting that they want to partner with you in some way, but that's not exactly that's just a spin on I want to
Yeah.
sell you something
Right.
to increase your profitability or whatever they're trying to bring to the table
So
at the
true.
same time. And some of them do work out and some of them are good, but yes,
Mhm.
discerning that is an excellent point.
Mhm.
All right. Well, Tiffany, I am really glad that we connected. And I think that it is great as women, as entrepreneurs, as people in the working genius community to get together and spur each other on. And I hope that this conversation does that for our listeners as well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and thank you for creating it. I think it is an amazing opportunity.